I don't blame everything on Pop, but what he said had a lot of influence. You had a lot of people where, unfortunately, you can't control what everybody's intelligence is.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFantasy to get yourself a $20 rebate on your first purchase. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at redrock_bball. The same if you want to support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/redrock_bball. And of course, the show always goes live over on Facebook at facebook.com/redrockbasketball. We are here to talk about Game 3 in the Eastern Conference Finals between Boston and Cleveland, break down the, shocking result in the end of that Game 3, their preview Game 4 in that series, and have a quick touch on Game 4 in the Western Conference Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the Golden State Warriors. So,
let's get to it.
It's a great idea, Mr. Bolton. We will indeed get right to it. Honestly, just pretty amazing stuff to see that. To see that Game 7 performance. We'll get straight into that. The Celtics end up winning 111-108 over the Cleveland Cavaliers on a last-second shot by Avery Bradley, which bounced around the rim and up and down and fell. And not only did it obviously go in and win them the game, but the fact that it bounced around the rim as much as it did, it wound time off the clock so that the Cavs couldn't actually have a chance at a shot to win the game. So yes, it went in and left 0.1 seconds on the clock, so they couldn't get a shot off. The way that it bounced up and down and it seemed to just hang around the rim for so long. It always appeared inevitable that it would go in, but just the fact that it just wasted those extra half a second is all it needed to waste, and it did. And the Celtics get the improbable victory without their star Isaiah Thomas, but that's okay because they just brought in a new star all the way from Sweden. Wish my sound bite was going to work for me. That would have been great. Oh well. Eventually it'll come. You know how technology works so well. No, I guess we're not getting it. That's super frustrating. Anyway, for you guys listening on the podcast, I'll add that bit in. I'll add that bit in a bit later on. Jonas Jerebko. Now, early on in the game, we saw Amir Johnson start, which continues to be a terrible idea, as I have said multiple times. Starting Gerald Green, also a terrible idea. We didn't have that one. We went back to Amir. That is what Brad Stevens continually does. Alternates between those two guys, and it never seems to work. And then we had Jerebko. We'll get to Jerebko in a sec. We had Tyler Zeller play in the first half. We had Amir Johnson. We had Gerald Green. And I sent a tweet out saying, why the hell would you play Tyler Zeller? And why would you be playing Amir Johnson and Gerald Green and not giving Jonas Jerebko a go? It made me seem like I'm much smarter than I am, because almost immediately after that, Jerebko came in and he was fantastic. In his 13 minutes, he had 10 points. He had 5 rebounds. He hit 2 threes. He blocked a shot. He was 4 of 4 from the field, and he was a massive part of why the Celtics were able to get this victory. They started Jerebko in the playoffs last season against Atlanta, and he played well, and then he gets banished from the rotation. Coaches make dumb decisions all the time, and to me, this continues to be a dumb decision. I don't know what Brad Stevens will do for Game 4, but it's almost guaranteed that he'll make a change. Whether that is putting Gerald Green back into the starting lineup, whether it's putting Jonas Jerebko in there, whether it's putting Tyler Zeller in there, whether it's going back to Amir Johnson, I don't know. But surely we have seen enough to know that Amir Johnson is bad, and he is not going to help a single bit. And that has been the case throughout the entirety of this playoffs, is that he just has been bad. So I'm not understanding why you would do that. Now, Johnson started, he played 9 minutes, he had a sore shoulder. Doesn't matter. He was getting railed by Kevin Love early on and shouldn't have been on the court at all. He finished with the 2 points. Kelly Olynyk got some minutes back here, 23 of them, 15, 3 and 2 in his 23 minutes, and shot the ball well. Yeah, another solid performance from Olynyk. Again, I still think that he is underused by Stevens, as I've mentioned plenty of times, and I can give you, I'm not coming here to give hot takes on Isaiah Thomas, but Thomas was out, Marcus Smart started, and he was absolutely fantastic. 27, 5, and 7. He hit 7 threes, he had 2 steals, and he had a block. One thing we know is that shooting's not real. He's not realistically going to be a 57% shooter, but he has been a very, very good three-point shooter throughout the playoffs. And this is something I did talk about yesterday. Is all his other numbers, they're going to be fine. If he has a night where he actually pops off and scores some big numbers, it's going to be massive for DFS. And it was absolutely massive in this game. That's a huge performance from Smart. I don't know what Marcus Smart's best position is. Is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? Is he a small forward? Is he a power forward? I don't know what he is. All I know is that he's a good player, and he should play. He should play a lot. And this is not a hot take to say that the team is better without Isaiah Thomas or anything like that. My feelings on Isaiah Thomas are pretty clear, and I've mentioned them plenty of times, is that I think that signing him to a max deal will not end up being a great decision, probably by year 3 of the contract. But what he did during the season was absolutely fantastic. But we've seen failings from him in the playoffs multiple times. He's not the only one that's in that boat. Clearly, we've seen Al Horford have some bad playoff games and had some good playoff games. But this is not an indication to say that the Celtics are better off without Isaiah Thomas, and it's not an indication to say that they should be immediately trading him once they get Markelle Fultz. It is just a very interesting sort of performance. Yeah, whether they back this up again in Game 4, I think will be a real test. I doubt that will happen, but it was a great performance from Smart. And as I did touch on yesterday, whenever he's been given those reins to become that starting point guard, he's put up good numbers. Al Horford 16, 2 and 6 in 36 was pretty good, while Avery Bradley had 23 and 4 with 2 steals and hit 3 triples. He only shot 35%, but the most important one of course went in. Terry Rozier was bad, 2 points in his 8 minutes, while Gerald Green had 5 points in 7 there as well. On to the Cavs, Kevin Love was on fire. He had 28 and 10. He hit 7 triples, and he was unstoppable early on. He did fade down the stretch. He hit, I think, 6 threes in the first half. Had 3 blocks, which is a weird thing for Kevin Love to have as well. But he was great, and he has been great throughout the entirety of this series. We'll just wait to see what happens in the next series, assumedly against the Warriors, where he could very easily get played off the court. Kyrie had 29, 2 and 7, hit 4 triples, and Tristan Thompson played 42 minutes and was great. 18 and 13 for Tomo with a block there as well. While LeBron, an absolutely horrendous performance from LeBron, from the kind of player that he is. 11, 6 and 6, a steal and a block, 31% shooting, 50% from the line. Just horrific. Really, really bad stuff from LeBron in this game. I'm sure he will look to bounce back, but that was just one that you didn't see coming. You didn't see that sort of performance coming from LeBron. J.R. Smith played a lot of minutes. He had probably his best game of the postseason, 13 and 8, which included 4 triples. And interestingly, Channing Frye out of the rotation, Kyle Korver and Iman Shumpert both under 20 minutes as well in this game. Kevin Carlson says, you can't say Thomas failed when he was injured. What are you talking about? I didn't say he failed in this game at all. I know he was injured. He was injured throughout the playoffs. I'm talking about even going back to last year in the playoffs. And I didn't say he was a failure. He had some decent games. He just doesn't perform to the same level in the playoffs as what he had in the regular season. That's what I was trying to get across. All right, that's the recap of Game 3, which again was awesome to have a game that was close and have a little bit of an upset happen, something we haven't had happen throughout the entirety of the conference finals so far. Let's talk about now today's sponsor, and that is, of course, a sponsor who's been with us for quite a while, and that is SeatGeek. Buying tickets online for sports and concerts has been a confusing process for a long time, and it's always been hard to find the best deal for that game or show that you want to go to, and none of the older ticket sites want to change that. But SeatGeek is different. They've come along, they've created an amazing app and a website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. SeatGeek's where I go when I want to buy tickets. As I've mentioned before, I'm coming across to the States in July. I went on SeatGeek, bought tickets to a Cubs and Cardinals game, bought one for the Giants and Indians game at AT&T Park. I'm really excited to go to both those stadiums, and got my tickets on SeatGeek, and I used the special Locked On Fantasy deal that I'm going to mention in just a sec. Everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. It does all the price comparison for you by searching multiple ticket sites, ensuring you get the best possible. Do you look on their website? Tickets in green, that's a good value price. Yellow, whatever, that's okay. Red, probably want to look somewhere else. And that's the way they go about grading their tickets. And you go on the app and on the site, you click the tickets, and you can see what what the view from that seat looks like in that specific arena, which is super, super helpful when you're deciding where you want to sit. Best of all listeners to this podcast get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the promo code, which is LOFantasy. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code LOFantasy today. All right. Now, in yesterday's show, I did a breakdown of Golden State San Antonio. We talked about what would happen if Kawhi and David Lee didn't play. David Lee is out. He has a partially torn patella tendon. I thought that was him done for the playoffs. It looks like it's not quite as serious as initially expected. I still don't. Well, they've got to get past Game 4 anyway. I still don't think we're going to see David Lee for the rest of this week with his partially torn patella tendon. And he was playing 5 minutes a night anyway, and he shouldn't have really even been playing those. So it's not going to have too much of an impact. But Kawhi is listed as doubtful, so I don't think we're seeing Leonard playing Game 4. So if you want to hear me break down how the value opens up for the Spurs and the Warriors in Game 4, go and listen to yesterday's podcast. For the Warriors, we don't know the status of Zaza Pachulia. Obviously, if he is out, that gives some more minutes to Dave West, who becomes a decent option, and JaVale McGee. But JaVale is priced so highly that it doesn't look like a superb option from him, and West probably becomes the better guy there, while Andre Iguodala is listed as probable. He's a horrendous fantasy option, given his price and the fact that they're probably going to restrict his minutes as he works his way through this knee problem that he's dealing with. He'll probably play, but he won't be getting the 31, 32 minutes. He's going to be looking at 20 to 25 in that lower range there. So at his price, which is mid fours to 5,000, around that mark, it's just not a good investment for a guy who's a very limited fantasy producer anyway, especially when Kevin Durant is in the lineup, and Kevin Durant is going to be in the lineup. Let's move on now and try and get a handle on Game 4 in this Boston-Cleveland series. No spread currently out for this one at this point. We know that Isaiah Thomas is out. There's no other injuries for us to be concerned about. So let's look at what we learnt from today and how we can apply that to that next game. Marcus Smart is now at $6,000. I don't think that's too high to use Marcus Smart. He played 41 minutes. He had 48 points today. He clearly smashed through that sort of value there. So no problem with using him. He's at 58 on DraftKings. Again, a really, really strong option. Now, as for Jaylen Brown, who was a $2,100 player, he only put up 7 points and played only 13 minutes, which I thought was way too few. Those Gerald Green minutes don't need to go to Gerald Green for a single second. They should have gone to Jaylen, and now FanDuel's bumped him to 36. So that takes a lot of the excitement away from Jaylen Brown at 3,600. On DraftKings at 3,000, he still has a degree of appeal, but he's not just this lock-in guy, let's go from here, especially considering we don't know what Brad Stevens will do. I do not see Gerald Green being a part of it, but who knows? He continually makes weird decisions at the fringes of his rotation on a pretty consistent basis. Other point guards in this game, Rozier at 3,500. That's too high for a guy that has honestly really struggled against Cleveland. I don't like that for Rozier. And 4,000 on DraftKings for him is not fantastic. This is a game, again, without Isaiah Thomas. Marcus Smart played 42 minutes and Rozier played like 8. So we didn't see that situation where they play together all that much. We saw Avery Bradley getting a lot more playing time. Now, if you want to throw Rozier into a tournament, it's a much better option for him over on FanDuel. That 4,000 on DraftKings for him is a horrendous price, and I don't think you should. There's absolutely no upside in that at all, unless Marcus Smart happens to get injured and he has to play 35 minutes. It is a horrendous price for Rozier at 4,000, so don't get too suckered into that. Kyrie Irving, he dropped 41 today. He's at 8,300. You've got him. You've got Steph. You're only two high-priced point guards. Game 4, Steph, potential blowout against the Spurs. He's a risky proposition, especially on FanDuel at the $10,000 price. So I like the Irving and Marcus Smart, who they have brought back to being a point guard after he played as a shooting guard on FanDuel for quite a while. A Kyrie Marcus Smart backcourt combination for this Monday Tuesday slate, I think, is a pretty decent way to go about it. Yeah, so Kyrie had a good game today. He had the 41 points, and at 8,300, I'm not too concerned about that. That's a pretty decent situation for Kyrie to be in. The shooting guards, J.R. Smith at 3,300. Well, he finally returned some value. It hasn't been easy for him to do that throughout the entirety of this season. He is an okay guy to look at. I don't love him. While Avery Bradley now up to 7,000. Now, Bradley had a pretty decent game today. He had 20 points, but at 7,000, he's not covering it at that number. So I'm not really loving that. He's up to 66 on DraftKings, but obviously he does get that bump in usage with Isaiah Thomas out. So if you are looking for a shooting guard and you don't want to take the risk on Clay, which is totally understandable, even though their salaries are pretty close, I actually feel pretty good about Bradley's floor in comparison to Thompson's, and I think Thompson has a higher GPP upside if they're the two shooting guards that you're taking a look at. Kyle Korver at 29, I don't see much there. Same with Shumpert and Gerald Green. Small forward, as I talked about Jalen already, don't know how he got sort of so off track there. Jay Crowder at 6,600, another strong game from him. 37 points there for Jay. 40 points with DraftKings scoring. At that 67 FanDuel, 64 DraftKings price for Jay Crowder, I think he's totally fine to use, and I have no issue with that whatsoever with slotting him in there. So I think he'd be a pretty good guy to have in as a not really a high upside guy, but a pretty solid floor sort of a player. That's the way I'd be looking at him. As for LeBron, 12.5, he shit the bed today clearly. 2x value is horrendous. 25 points, kills you. But your other options are Kawhi, who's not going to play at that high price small forward, or it's Kevin Durant, who's at that $10,000 mark, and there is a risk that he doesn't play. Now, the odds of LeBron putting together two absolute shit sandwiches in a row is pretty low. So I would be okay going back to LeBron for cash and for tournaments. I feel pretty okay about that. I just don't think he's going to serve up. I don't think the Cavs or the Celtics did anything special to say, you know what, they've figured it out. They know how to stop LeBron. I don't think that was the case. He was just completely off, and it happens. We've seen it happen to players all the time, and I imagine that he bounces back and gives us another 50. Power forwards, Kevin Love at 7,800. At the moment, he's as consistent as they come at that sort of a price tag. 77 on DraftKings. Really can't go past that. Well, my boy Jonas Jerebko, the big Swede, the Swedish superstar, 1,800 for Jonas. He had 20 points today in 13 minutes. Do they start him? It's a huge possibility. Do they give him minutes? Well, they absolutely should. 1,800, not a high bar to pass. Totally fine. That's a real cheap option that you can go for. Now, he comes at 2,000 on DraftKings, so it's not quite as good, but it's still pretty bloody impressive. And it's going to be hard to turn down your Repko at that sort of a price tag. I do really like him there. Amir Johnson, Channing Frye. Well, Frye didn't even play at all. Joe Sherman says, do you take Crowder over Aldridge? I believe Crowder is cheaper than Aldridge, so yes, I would, and I think that he feels a little bit more consistent at this point. But again, if you've got that extra cash for Aldridge, I would rather take him, because in terms of gross point totals, I'm going to have a look so I don't make a mistake here of saying what Aldridge is at 8,000 and Crowder's at 66, so it's $1,400 difference. But if you've got the extra 1,400, then Aldridge is the way to go. But if I'm starting a lineup, I put Crowder in there and then build around it, and I say, shit, I've got 1,400 to go or left over. Then do I upgrade from Crowder to Aldridge? That's the way I'd look at it. So yes, pure net or gross points, Aldridge, yes, but value wise, Crowder is the safest option there as well. Kevin says that Rozier ran the worst 3-on-1 fast break I've ever seen. It was horrendous, that fast. I know exactly what one you're talking about. It was absolutely horrible. After Jaylen Brown made such a great steal, that fast break was disgusting. It was so bad. And yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. Let's talk centers. Tristan Thompson's at 4,600. That's a nice price drop on FanDuel. Happy to go back to him. Really solid center at that sort of price tag. While Al Horford at 8,000, much like I just talked about with Aldridge. If you've got the extra $3,400 and nowhere else to spend it, you're taking Horford over Thompson's a great way to go. But when you're starting out a lineup, Thompson's the one that you want to start with at that spot. Just think that Thompson at 4,600 and JaVale McGee, who I assume is still he's at $4,000. That is as clear a decision as there can be. You pay $600 more to get Tristan Thompson over JaVale McGee. Ludicrous pricing. But if you do have the cash to get that extra $3,000 and take Al Horford, I would. But it's not the way that I would like to start a lineup. 4,800 for Kelly Olynyk. Do I spend that, or do I take 46 on Tristan Thompson? As dumb as that, it's just dumb. It has to be Thompson. Now, Olynyk could come out and be great because he is. I say that semi-tongue-in-cheek. But the chances of that happening, or the chances of Olynyk playing big minutes, it's so minimal compared to what Thompson's going to do that I just can't see why you would ever go in that direction. So a really strange pricing set up there for Tomo at that 4,600 mark that he currently sits at. Tyler Zeller, the other center on the board, we don't have to wait. We don't have to worry too much about him. All right, that does it for this game. Let's just have a look over the overall slate of this Monday-Tuesday slate and see where the value really lies. We'll start on FanDuel, and Shawnee Livingston's at 1,500. He had a real stinker in Game 3. I think he'll be better than that, but at 1,500, the risk there is minimal. I still do like taking a Kyrie Smart backcourt or a Smart Curry backcourt, but Livingston at 15 is not bad. Kyle Anderson at 3,600. I think you really have to get on that with Kawhi out. That's strong. Tristan Thompson we talked about as well, while Davis Bertans at 2,400 with Lee and Leonard both out. I think he becomes quite a strong option. DeJounte Murray, John Simmons, and Aldridge, as I touched on, 8,000. It's not ideal, but I think that he can be a player that is used in multiple winning lineups. I don't like Pat Mills. I don't really like Dan Green all that much. They're all right. And of course, your Jerebko at 1,800 is pretty rock solid. 10,000 for Steph, 78 for Kevin Love, and some nice high-priced guys, as is LeBron at 12.5. That's all with FanDuel. On DraftKings, we look at Bertans at 2,000, Kyle Anderson at 36, Marcus Smart at 58 as all good options. Aldridge at 78 is a little bit better than he is on FanDuel, but still there is that risk. And Clay at 6,000 is a much more appealing option on DraftKings than he is over on FanDuel. 7,100 for Al Horford is also better, and the 9,600 for Steph, it makes him a decent play over there. Of course, we still love Thompson, we still love Kevin Love, and Draymond at 79, not someone I really talked about on today's show, but at 7,900, I feel all right about Draymond. At least getting me 35 is almost a floor for him, and that's a pretty good floor for a guy coming in at $7,900. We talked about Jay Crowder, we talked about Avery Bradley, we talked about Kevin Durant. They're all fairly strong options there as well. Now, tomorrow's show, I don't know what we're going to do. If Golden State wins, that series is over and DFS is over. So if that's the case, then tomorrow will become the Los Angeles Lakers season in review show. If the Spurs get the victory, then it will be a Wednesday DFS preview show. Once one of these series is over, DFS ends. It's as simple as that. So I won't know what I'm doing until tomorrow, and then we'll go headlong into the season in review stuff, starting with the Lakers, which could be as early as tomorrow, or it could be any other day this week. So you'll have to just stay tuned and see exactly what episode is coming. The best way to do that is to subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, on TuneIn. Any of those places is going to be your best option. And leave a review. If you do like the show, that's a fantastic way of supporting the program, as well as heading to patreon.com/redrock_bball. We are done. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Zaza Pachulia.